Hello and welcome to Why Wait Till Sunday. This is a traveling edition of our show as we are going to go over my top 10 basically under the radar transfers in college football this year. These are guys who are probably being overlooked in terms of whether or not they can make an impact. Obviously, this is all kind of some high risk, dart throws. None of these guys are, the Eric Gray going to Oklahoma or, I don't know. There's some other big name transfers this year, but we're going to bypass those because everybody kind of knows about them. And we're going to talk about some transfers that I think are on the radar. These are probably all guys that are available when the college side of your C2C opens up. They're probably going to be available. I don't even know if they're going to be rostered anywhere. And so, free pickups off the free agency, last round dart throws, but, guys on new teams that can potentially make an impact. And some of these guys at the top of this list are still young enough that I think they can still be on an NFL track. Without further ado, we're going to go over 10 guys I kind of like to do something at their new school. And we're going to talk about that. These are not your marquee transfers, so keep that in mind. This does not include guys like Eric Gray, Keontae Ingram, even Ethan Garber's over at UCLA. Like, those are big name transfers that, everybody knows about, and they're probably rostered in your leagues. These are guys who are under the radar, but I think could make a name for themselves in a new situation. We're going to start 10, go to 1. Number 10 is Mark Anthony Richards. This is a running back who was a pretty highly rated 4-star coming out of the state of Florida as a recruit. He was a multi-dimensional running back in high school. In his senior year, he gained over 3,000 all-purpose yards, including 1,300 yards on the ground, but was also used as a receiver. I remember, Florida recruiting him, and I was pretty excited. I thought he could be a guy to come in and be a dual threat weapon, running back, receiver. So he went to Auburn originally. So obviously, big time Power 5 scholarship. And he got injured with a knee injury in his first season before I think games even started. I think he was an early enrollee. I think he made some noise in his original spring and then got injured before the actual first season on campus. So he redshirted his entire freshman year. Was still working back from that injury when Tank Bigsby walked on campus at Auburn. Obviously, we know he is a stud, future high-end NFL draft pick by most people's projection. And so he, didn't do a whole lot behind Tank Bigsby and the rest of the running backs they had at Auburn. He did get into the Alabama game this year as a redshirt freshman and went 14 for 57. He also returned a punt versus LSU. So that's kind of interesting. He was they thought of him highly enough to put him back there to return a punt. Now, granted, there's only one punt, but, he was somewhat relevant, at least in the eyes of the coaches, to put him back there and, receive a punt. He got 14 carries against Alabama. I think Bigsby was a little, broken up. And also was a blowout game, but still, it's Alabama. You're gonna try your hardest against Alabama. You're not gonna just give up in that type of game, that type of rivalry. And I watched those carries. So I watched the 14 carries against Alabama, and I wasn't blown away. He didn't look too elusive. He definitely has some burst, some speed. I didn't see any pass catching, which is a bummer. I thought that would be something I'd like to see. That was certainly something he did in high school. But I wasn't terribly impressed. I didn't see a lot of electricity out of him, but he's also coming back from this knee injury as a freshman and was thrust into a game against Alabama. So, it wasn't the best environment to really pop off. That being said, he goes now and follows Malzahn to UCF. And UCF is a team that has had, some quality offensive production for sure, but not really with Malzahn yet. We don't know what that offense is going to look like, but presumably he's familiar with the system that Malzahn's going to install. He's still going into his third year in college, so not quite too old to still get his career back on track. Yeah, I mean, he's kind of interesting. He's gotten up to 208 pounds, I think. So he's 6'1". Now he's 208. I think he was under 200 as an incoming recruit. So that's nice that he's up that high. And, post injury with the extra weight, what we're going to be looking for is explosion and certainly still a pass catching role for this UCF team in 2021. And I think with his familiarity with the system and the fact that he's following his old coach, you would imagine that there was some discussion there. There was some, hey, come with me to UCF. I think we can use you right away. And Malzahn's familiar with Mark Anthony, having recruited him. And then also, now he's at his new school. So some comfort level there between coach and player. And UCF, I think, lost two running backs. They had these two, both very small, fast running backs that they would interchange. And then there's Bentavious Thompson, I think is his name, another running back who's been the third team guy there, but still getting some run. And he'll factor in some way. But after that, it's a bunch of unknown guys. I mean, guys I don't even, register on my radar, knowing the depth chart pretty well and knowing, for DFS purposes, wanting to know who the running back at UCF was, but it was really a muddled backfield with a ton of committee situations. So I think it's worth noting Mark Anthony Richards. He has a ton of prospect pedigree. He was coming off an injury and then he lost time to Tank Bigsby, who you can't fault that. I mean, Bigsby might be, a high second round pick. None of these guys are at this point projected to be, a high NFL draft pick. These are guys who could help you in your C2C, and then you're hoping at this point that they're going to become NFL relevant. So, Richards, the ceiling is potentially capped. He hasn't done anything his first 2 years on campus. That's usually not a great sign, but new situation. It is a G5 team with UCF, but I think they're kind of a premium G5 team, getting run, getting TV time, and the American is not, the worst conference. And he should have an opportunity to put up some stats and yardage. And yeah, the NFL does still care about the box score. So I think he could get his name on some lists. Okay, that's enough about Mark Anthony. He's just my number 10 guy. He's maybe rostered because of his prospect pedigree. I do have him buried on some depth chart in a C2C league, and I'm hoping that something happens at UCF. We shall see. Next on the list, Kyrick McGowan. He is a wide receiver, kind of a running back hybrid type, out of Northwestern and going now to Georgia Tech as a fifth-year grad transfer. So that alone tells you his NFL prospects are probably very limited as a fifth-year grad transfer. He's 5'11", 205, so he's nice, stocky, kind of a slot receiver, also, kind of used as a running back. He had 65 receptions and 55 rushes in his career at Northwestern. And this past year, he did get to 20% of the team's receiving yard market share. As a fourth-year senior, that's not too impressive to just barely break 20%. But it means he's relevant. I mean, finally got his way onto being a pretty useful part of that offense. And I think he actually had the second most touches, if I remember correctly, behind their running back in terms of, because he did, rush the ball a lot and then also had a second on the team in receptions. He was used a lot, as a movable, weapon on that Northwestern offense. Northwestern is not known for their offense, and who knows, what could have been if he had been inserted into a better system, a better offense during his career. But as it stands now, I think this is just interesting probably for C2C. But he's a guy you can totally pick up off waivers. He's going to go play at Georgia Tech. That's an ascending team, in my opinion, ascending program. And you've got Jeff Sims back there. You've got Jahmyr Gibbs. He won't have to be a focal point of the offense, but with Jeff Sims' talent set and his skill set, he doesn't throw a great deep ball. I think that's why Amarian Brown transferred out, because they couldn't utilize him. But if they're going to use more of a horizontal game, some trickery in the backfield, maybe with McGowan lining up in dual backfield sets potentially. Also in the short passing game, where Sims I think might be a little bit better, get him the ball in space, and he can do some things. I saw him. I went back and watched Little Northwestern, and he's bursty. He is interesting with the ball in his hands. I'll say that much. He is exactly what you would think of a guy who kind of does the receiving, rushing, hybrid role. I think in that Georgia Tech offense, this can be something that may produce for us. And I just think in general, that team is kind of on the up and up. I think it's a good landing spot for McGowan. He's going to come in and probably be a featured player, just as a multifaceted weapon. Jeff Sims already has called him, quote, a beast from spring practice. So he's already on campus. He's getting the chemistry there. And outside, Jahmyr Gibbs is great. He's the running back. And Jeff Sims is an interesting dual threat quarterback, more interesting because of what he can do on the ground. But McGowan could be, I think it's going to be, Sims and Gibbs 1 and 2 in the offense in terms of production, but McGowan could be number 3. They also have an incoming freshman, James Blackstrain, who's interesting, but the returning receivers aren't too exciting. They have guys that did things, but I don't know. I think McGowan's interesting. They obviously brought him in as a veteran guy, and maybe he does some things. And we've seen fifth-year seniors get draft buzz before. Dwayne Eskridge is doing that right now. So he comes out, he shows his versatility, and shows out in the ACC, which may produce a little more of the box scores that we would be looking for, rather than Northwestern, who plays a ton of defense in the Big Ten and just sits on the ball. And, they're not going to be an explosive offense at all. So I think in this new team, we could see some a box score explosion, and then, people start buzzing about Kyric McGowan. Obviously, I'm a big believer in early breakout, and that is not Kyric McGowan at all. So if you have NFL aspirations, temper them. It would be cherry on top of the sundae if he does do that. But in C2C next year, you could be pleasantly surprised on the college side. EJ Jenkins comes in at number 8. He is a tight end wide receiver hybrid. He played at St. Francis University, which is a nothing university. I believe it's DFCS. It may not even be FCS, to be honest. I'm not even sure. It's a very tiny program. And he's making the leap all the way to an SEC school. He's signed with South Carolina. He's simply on this list because he is a freakishly large tight end wide receiver hybrid that, we don't know what can happen, but he's listed at 6'7", 242, massive, target. Obviously goes without saying, red zone, jump ball guy, end zone guy. Obviously, yes, at 6'7", 242. Yes, he is that potential at the minimum. He did in his third year at St. Francis. So, when you're going that small in division, you'd like to see first or second year. Of course, you'd like to see first or second year in the Power 5. So it doesn't really matter. You always want early production. But it was his third year after a redshirt freshman year and didn't do a whole lot. Then redshirt sophomore year, he went 39, 779, and 13, which was basically 30% of the team's weighted dominator rating there. So accounting for a tremendous amount of their passing production at St. Francis. 13 touchdowns was almost 50% of the team's passing touchdowns went to Jenkins. Yeah, it was for St. Francis, which plays in Lord only knows division in FCS. However, it's performing at a very high level, and he's got a frame that's super duper exciting. The buzz out of South Carolina spring practice is that he is working with the second team. They do have a nice Nick Muse is returning at tight end, and he also is a lower level transfer up to South Carolina, so they seem to like doing this with the tight ends. Tight ends can come from anywhere, though, because you got guys who maybe grow as they get into college, and all of a sudden they go from a slowish 6'4" receiver to a fast 6'7" tight end. I mean, I don't know if that's what happened with him, but tight ends seem to come from absolutely anywhere. As long as you're big and you have some athleticism, there's a potential role for you. And so EJ Jenkins lands at South Carolina in the SEC. Now we get to see what he could possibly do against real competition. I think it goes without saying he's still going to be a jump ball guy, red zone guy. And I read somewhere that on, I think, the 247 team page for South Carolina, that they're potentially going to be running some 2 tight end sets, getting Muse and Jenkins on the field at the same time. So, yeah, I mean, he's certainly a dart throw, but at that frame, I also did, I go to work for you folks. I enjoy this, but I also say I can't get on the mic and talk about these players without having set eyes on them. So this is not just metrics box score scouting. I went and I found EJ Jenkins St. Francis University film. I watched, yes, they were highlights. Sorry I couldn't get the full game of the St. Francis University team. But from what I could see, he surprised me with his athleticism. Sometimes you get these guys who are 6'7", 6'8", tight ends, and they're 250, 60 pounds. You watch them and they're like, well, yeah, they're an ogre. I mean, they're just... any production comes out of just simply being bigger than their competition. But Jenkins really did flash some fluid athleticism and agility, not just, cement shoes, humongous player running down the field like Frankenstein. I mean, he did show surprising athleticism for his obviously size. So I think he actually, there could be a future here. And just because he did look, just in a vacuum, not even against the competition, just looking at his movements on the field, you can tell when a guy looks smooth and quick. He kind of did to me. So I was definitely expecting to see a slow, lumbering power forward, but I did see a guy who actually looked athletic at 6'7", 242. So yeah, I'm certainly interested. And this is a guy who doesn't probably even have to do a ton at South Carolina, but if he gets in the end zone some, if he can get invited to the combine, and if he's really athletic, we start talking about him as a late round tight end dart throw in the NFL. I don't think it's out of the question. He is going to get a chance to do something in the SEC, and that will get him on radars. There is a path here for him to get on an NFL team. Much different guys from much lower competition that never get on an FBS team, much less an SEC team, find their way onto NFL rosters. It happens. So EJ Jenkins absolutely has a chance. So I think, in 2 tight end setups, or you've got some kind of wonky deep tight end premium C2C league or something, don't forget about EJ Jenkins. Again, at this point on this list, these are last round guys. I mean, there's a chance that your league mates don't even know who this is. So, keep an ear to the ground in the South Carolina reports. See if they're talking about these guys at all. I already told you the few things I've heard about him. There is a little buzz about him. Then as we get into fall practice, just keep listening in. South Carolina, there's a number of guys on South Carolina, because their receiver room is so thin, that we're looking to get news about. Also, Marshawn Lynch, as an aside, Marshawn Lloyd is still practicing off to the side. He is not practicing with the team. So I like to throw that in there because everyone's worried he's going to take all these carries from Kevin Harris. He's not even practicing live football yet. And it's spring heading into fall practice, and Kevin Harris is great. And I'm by the day, until I hear that Marshawn Lloyd is fully practicing, I am not worried about him taking a substantial portion of the running game this year, at least. Number 7, we've got a cluster of quarterbacks, and I just put them all together because, I'm not sure how it's going to play out for all these guys. They have very limited NFL potential, I think, but, interesting. Again, all these guys, I think, have at least a path if you dream hard enough. The guy who has the least likely chance is number 7, Jason Bean. He is a quarterback out of North Texas, and he has transferred to Kansas. So he's made the leap from from G5 to Power 5, even though Kansas is a glorified G5 team. They are horrible. They've been horrible for years and years and years. They're absolutely atrocious, but it's Power 5, and he will get a chance to perform against Power 5 competition. Even if Kansas sucks, he can maybe put some stuff on tape, that will come across an NFL evaluator's desk, because that's what Power 5 gives you the opportunity to get noticed, and people are going to start saying, oh, who is this guy at Kansas? So Jason Bean, what's the deal with Jason Bean? He is a fourth-year guy, or will be. All these guys are going to be. I'm telling you, the year they are entering into. So Bean is entering into his 4th year. He was at North Texas before this. He performed in 2020 with 55% completion percentage for 1,131 yards on 145 attempts, 14 touchdowns, only 5 interceptions. But here's the thing, 56 for 346 and 5 touchdowns on the ground. Looking at his highlights from North Texas, he really flashes with his legs. He looks actually athletic. Like, he can make some moves. He looks fast on the ground. I think his rushing component to his game is legitimate. I think the rushing component to his game will translate at least into what he's going to do this year at Kansas if he gets on the field. Now, he's not even enrolled. I think he's a summer enrollee, so he's missing spring practice. That's a bummer for his chances. I have been reading the Kansas spring reports. They do have, their incumbent from last year is back, but he was not good. And they have some other guys on the team, but I think Bean, certainly could come in and compete for the starting job right away. And so that's what I'm hoping for, obviously, by putting him on this list at all. But, playing DFS, you get to know these guys a little bit. And I played Bean in a week or two with North Texas was on the schedule. And yeah, I mean, he just, the rushing component is super exciting. You love these dual threat quarterbacks. And I'll tell you, so Jalen Daniels is their kind of top returning quarterback from last year. He completed 50% of his passes with a 4.7 yards per attempt. He had 73 rushing attempts, most on the team, for 20 total yards. I guess he had some positive gains, but he had 73 attempts for 20 total yards. He is not a dynamic scrambler, obviously, even if you include sacks. Bean, on the other hand, completed 54% of his passes. Like I said, 7.8 yards per attempt, granted in a Conference USA, but was a legitimate guy on the ground. I can't imagine they're bringing in. Why would Bean want to go up to the Kansas team instead of playing at North Texas next year and potentially starting? He's going to Kansas. I would imagine they said you have an open competition. I cannot imagine that Jalen Daniels is like the obvious starter, after completing 50% of his passes for 4.7 yards per attempt. Like, that's redonkulous. That's awful. I mean, it's just completely not a dynamic profile. So I think Jason Bean is going to start. I mean, I think this guy is going to come in, and he seems to be much more of a spark plug than whoever they have there at Kansas. So that's why he's on this list. It's a little bit of a gamble that I think he's just going to come in and play. And he's got attributes that I like, both for fantasy and, for making an impact. Then we have Mackenzie Milton. He's number 6 on this list. He's probably one of the more high-profile names on the list. I included him. I went back and forth. Does he qualify for an under-the-radar transfer? And I kind of think he does, just because I haven't heard tons of people talking about him. Maybe it's because he was one of the first people to, declare that he was going to transfer out of UCF. But I just hope he's not forgotten what he did. I mean, he hasn't played since 2018. He missed completely 2019. He missed most of 2020. He was apparently medically cleared to come back, but Dylan Gabriel was already the quarterback at UCF and doing well, so they didn't mess around with Milton. But back in 2017, if you remember, he had an absolutely sensational sophomore year. His EPA, expected points added, which is a really nice stat for quarterbacks. It basically means every play you were involved with, did you get closer to scoring than the play that you ran or than where you were when the play started. There's a whole calculation about expected points and based on yard down distance on the field. It's a mathematical thing. But basically, if the play ends in a better percent chance to score, you have a positive EPA. And so every single play adds up. He had a 267 EPA in 2017 as a true sophomore for UCF. That is an incredibly high EPA number. The average for a second-year quarterback across, all of college football of guys who will end up being relevant in the NFL is 150. He had 267. And he was tracking for 240 before an injury in 2018 where he missed the rest of the season. He then missed, of course, 2019. He missed basically all of 2020. But that sophomore year, his raw stats were also incredible. He threw for over 4,000 yards and added 500 yards on the ground. He was awesome. He was just awesome. He increased his star rating on 24/7 Sports from 3. They kind of list a transfer star rating and a versus his recruit star rating. Most guys are about the same. Some guys drop a star when they are transferring. Very few gain a star when they transfer. And McKenzie Milton went from a 3-star to a 4-star rating on 24/7 Sports as a transfer. He's the only guy this year that I saw went up, didn't stay the same, but actually gained a star. He was the only guy who gained a 4th star. Some go from 2 to 3. Most stay, at 3, 3, 4, 4, whatever. But he gained a star and he gained a 4th star. That's pretty impressive. He has 1 year to do it at FSU, so it's going to be a Power 5, not G5. He's going to be able to compete in the ACC. And if he comes in and starts right away, which it seems like that's going to be the case, he could make his way onto an NFL team. And he's small, listed, 5'11", like 190 pounds or something like that. And he's coming off a devastating injury, so we don't really know. But he was very, very good with a quick release, adequate arm strength, and could end up being a very deep sleeper in Superflex leagues if he lights it up as FSU and, makes his way onto an NFL team. His height is going to be a bit of a problem at 5'11", and lightweight, but he's no Kyler Murray, but we've seen Kyler Murray be the number 1 draft pick. So I don't think this would stop someone from picking him late. Day 3, maybe. Makes his way to a backup. Maybe he impresses. I mean, these are a lot of maybes, but the facts are he has put on the stat sheet, he has put on film an absolutely, elite young season as a quarterback. So exciting to see what he does. He gets an opportunity in a Power 5 conference for 1 year. Let's see what he can do. McKenzie Milton. And then we have another guy who you might be surprised is, rated higher than McKenzie Milton for me. But I think at least his frame, size, and stature might get him a more realistic shot at getting on an NFL team, at least as a backup. That's Bailey Zappi he's transferred from Houston Baptist to Western Kentucky. So from FCS up to FBS, but still G5, although Western Kentucky is kind of a frequent bowl team. And so, it's a respectable G5 team. I profiled him more in depth. We'll kind of skip over him a little bit. Please go back, and if you're listening and want to get more about Bailey Zappi, go check the Sleeper Saturday with him. He was the first Sleeper Saturday of this year. I did a full 3-game breakdown. It's like an hour-long episode or something, talking about everything that I'm seeing. But in his 4th year at Houston Baptist, he completed 65% of his passes for 1,833 yards, 15 touchdowns, 1 pick. That was only 4 games. So pretty nice stats for only 4 games. And he will be entering his 5th year, taking advantage of the transfer up a competition to Western Kentucky. They brought the whole band from Houston Baptist. I think 3 receivers came over. So he's going to have a lot of familiar faces to throw to. And then also a very exciting tight end prospect, Joshua Simon, also plays for Western Kentucky. So he will get a chance to receive balls from Bailey Zappi, who I think is good. He's got a pretty quick release. He did make some throws that I thought were, big time throws. I'll just put it that way at Houston Baptist against FBS competition. They played 3 games against some bowl teams this year. And he was just lighting people up. I mean, the stats were outrageous in 4 games, obviously 1,800 yards. That's insane. They did run, a wide open, 5 wide, throw it 50 times a game offense. But, they did do it against legitimate FBS competition. And he looked pretty good. I thought he made some good deep throws. He can really... a very accurate player and can get the ball to all sides of the field from what I could see. So go back and check out the Sleeper Saturday if you want to know more about Bailey Zappi. But I think he's going to light it up for Western Kentucky at the very least. In C2C, you're going to get 1 year of, 3,500, 4,000 yards. I think they're just going to sling it all around Western Kentucky. So, I would get excited at least for 2021 in your Campus to Canton. And if he's good enough, and they get, maybe they get a bowl game. Maybe he goes to the Senior Bowl. Okay, now you go to the Senior Bowl. Now we're really going to start talking about Bailey Zappi and this great story it is and coming from FCS and blah, blah, blah. He's going to be a darling. So there is definitely a window here where he could make it, light it up for Western Kentucky, make it to the Senior Bowl, and now we're really talking about some NFL potential. So, you got to think through what is the logical, steps that you have to happen and not just, dream pie in the sky situation, but he's put it together now for years at Houston Baptist and gets an opportunity now, could make a bowl game and get on TV. All that matters in terms of people kind of just, the general awareness of who he is and what he can do. So I was pretty impressed. I liked Bailey Zappi, and he's going to get an upgrade in some of his weapons and also get some familiar faces transferring over from Houston Baptist with him. All right, number 4, Mekhi Polk. He's going from Cal to Mississippi State. It will be his 3rd year. He went 17, 183, and 1 in a very short season for Cal. COVID-shortened weirdo season, of course. He had 10% of the market share as a true freshman, which is kind of that minimum I like to see as like, okay, he got on the field, he did some things. You want to see higher, of course, but 10% is basically watch list for me automatically, especially in the Power 5, which he was. And then he hit 20% just barely in receptions, yards, and weighted dominator as a sophomore. So that 17, 183, and 1 line was enough to be 20% of all those different metrics. So, yeah, I mean, they didn't do a whole lot as an offense, but for what they did do, he got to 20% as a true sophomore. And that's the bare bones minimum to put, again, continuing on that watch list path. Like, it's just enough to get yourself recognized. But now he goes from Cal, which was a bit of a dumpster fire, to Mississippi State. 5 wide, air raid offense. So we've got a real situation here where he could put up some big time numbers, get noticed, and away we go. He's a fluid mover, large frame, 6'3", 200 pounds or so. But I thought he moved quickly. These tall guys, what I'm really looking for is, do they move well at that size? Because a lot of players like that, when I talked about the tight ends, you get excited about, 6'3", 220 or something like that. And then they just kind of like don't move very well. They're just not as agile as you want them to be. But I thought Polk was. They used him on screens. He got bubble screens and stuff wrapped around blocks and then would break big plays. Also some down the field acrobatics, big time catches down the sideline, running outside, running as an X receiver. He had an amazing catch and run. I think this was more of a screen, but amazing catch and run against Washington State in 2019, where he caught, juked 2 or 3 guys, and took it to the house. So, yeah, I think he was tracking on a very NFL worthy path, and decided to obviously transfer, but he's going to the SEC. I like that. I like a transfer up in competition, a transfer up in prestige, which I think Mississippi State is not that impressive, but Cal to Mississippi State I think is an upgrade just because it's the SEC. So I really like him. They do have Jaden Walley, who just broke out as a true freshman. He's obviously coming back. They have some other guys they seem to like. In the most recent scrimmage, they directly asked Mike Leach about Mekhi Polk as an incoming transfer. He said he's doing a good job. I'm glad he's here. So not raving about Polk. I would have liked to hear a little bit more, but yeah, that's where we stand with Polk. He's still coming in. He's learning a brand new system, all that stuff. It's early. But I would have liked to hear oh yeah, he's crushing it. He's awesome. So he's can he take the mantle from the freshman breakout Jaden Walley? We'll have to see. Jalen Polk, another Polk, back-to-back, wide receiver, Texas Tech University, headed to Washington now. I think that's kind of an upgrade in prestige. Texas Tech is a little more of a middling team. Washington, is ranked on a fairly regular basis. And he's headed into his second year. So the next 2 guys are just completing their freshman seasons and moving on already. They are still young enough to break out as sophomores. They're still young enough to really be, I think, a substantial NFL pick. They're still young enough probably to do enough in the next 2 years. Now they're going to be immediately eligible to do enough for 2 years and then go to the NFL as early declares. So both of these next 2 guys have a little higher ceiling just because they're still young enough they can do it. And Jalen Polk was pretty relevant. Again, he broke that 10% minimum as a true freshman where okay, he was relevant. Can he do more in year 2? But he's leaving. He's going to Washington. He was 28 for 264 and 2 at Texas Tech as a true freshman. His high school tape is pretty good. He's a taller guy, so he's like 6'2" or 3, pushing 190 or so. He looks pretty good, smooth mover. Again, when you're over 6 feet, I'm starting to really want to. I expect guys 6 feet and under to be very quick, agile. But when you get over 6 feet, it's impressive if you're agile. I thought he was. I thought he made some leaping grabs. I thought he made some good open field movement. That's what I want to see. If you're big, can you make guys miss in the open field? Do you have stuff in your toolbox when you get the ball in space, or are you just posting people up and falling down? I thought he had some of that in his game, some extra ability after the catch, some athleticism. So I kind of liked what I saw out of Jalen Polk in his high school tape and some of what he did for Texas Tech this past year. I mean, 264 yards, 10% of the team's passing yards. So that's something. That's saying you get in the field and you're a relevant, you're not a dominant part of the offense, but you're a relevant part of the offense. Now he gets to go to Washington. It's had a mass exodus. 2 or 3 receivers have transferred. And really the last man standing is Jalen McMillan, who is a pretty highly rated recruit coming out as a true freshman. He caught 2 passes, almost did nothing. But a lot of people like him. I think he's got a pretty good chance. His tape was really interesting. I think he was my number 2 rising sophomore potential breakout. So I like Jalen McMillan quite a bit. But Jalen Polk, so we've got 2 Jalens spelled differently, could absolutely be a factor. And they've got Sam Heward already on campus, 5-star quarterback, not a running threat at all. So he is going to be slinging the ball, and he definitely can. That is his game. He is a pinpoint touch passer, and he can distribute. And so I think I like that. I like the Washington passing offense as a pretty cheap unit to invest in your C2C, because I think they're going to, if not in 2021, by 2022, when Heward's is a sophomore, start lighting up the scoreboard. And so you want to have investment there. All right, number 2. I will bet you're unfamiliar with this name. Maybe I'm not giving you enough credit, but Marcus Fleming. He went to high school in Florida. You love that as a wide receiver. That is a hotbed for wide receivers. It's not anecdotal. It's in the numbers. That is a hotbed for wide receivers. So out of Miami North, Miami North Side or something, high school, which is a powerhouse down there. He originally went to Nebraska. Now, he had a line of 5.75-0 as a freshman season. But Nebraska only played like 4 games. And he had 5 for 75 in one game. It was the second game of the season against Northwestern. He had 5 for 75 in that one game. I looked to see if he had injuries or anything. I saw no reports of an injury. I think he appeared in other games. He got on the field in the very first game ever as a true freshman. Didn't catch a pass. Then caught 5 for 75 against Northwestern, which honestly is more impressive than if he caught 5 for 75 across all 4 games. There was a game where he was the featured receiver, and Wan'Dale Robinson played in that game. He was the featured receiver as a true freshman in the second game of the season. That says something, okay? You are looking for morsels, nuggets of relevance, unless it's a true freshman, breakout, obviously, that's totally different. But when you're looking at these guys, these are under the radar guys. These are, no names, but he was very relevant for a game, the second game of the season. So this wasn't even like down the line. 5 for 75. I watched the game because I care about you. I want to give you good information. I watched the game against Northwestern. I did fast forward until I saw him catching passes, and I would watch those plays. And yeah, he caught some down the sideline. He caught some over the middle with some slants. He's really fast. His high school highlights are really nice and impressive. Very electric guy. Very fast player. Smaller, 5'10", 170 listed right now. He also, in that Northwestern game, so he didn't score, but he had a man beat in the end zone when Adrian Martinez overthrew him. He also had another, drew a pass interference on NFL prospect Greg Newsome, who is like going to be a day 2 pick. He drew a pass interference in the end zone on Greg Newsome. So, this is a true freshman. Maybe I'm grasping at straws. I'll let you be the judge. I'm just trying to give you the information here. But this is a true freshman who is the featured player against a good Northwestern defense and drew a pass interference in the end zone against an NFL prospect. That's something. We can hang our hat on that. That's something. That's some more impressive stuff than some of what these other guys did. And really, it's because he was a true freshman doing this. And there's some stuff here. He was a 4-star recruit. He was a pretty big get for Nebraska. I think, to be honest, he was on campus and said, Adrian Martinez is horrible. He cannot get me the ball. And Luke McCaffrey was awful as a passer and transferred out. So I think he's like, oh, man, I got to do this with Adrian Martinez again. I'm out. And so he goes to Maryland, who's got the younger brother of Tua, and I think he was kind of impressive. So the Maryland receiving room, though, he's going to a receiving room. He's going to have to earn his keep for sure. Raheem Jarrett's very exciting, awesome 5-star guy, and did break out a little bit as a true freshman for Maryland. Dante Demas is a nice little player going into his 4th year. So he, I think realistically, if he comes in and he's 3rd on the team in receiving, I'll be pretty impressed because they have those other 2 players. If he's 2nd and beats out Demas or something like that, and it's, Jarrett and Fleming as the top 2, I'm really impressed because that's 2 sophomores then, and we'll see what happens. But keep your eye on Marcus Fleming, and I would absolutely want him on a C2C roster because I think there's real potential here. He's got the pedigree. He's got the prerequisite speed and athleticism. And I think he does have opportunity. The odds-on favorite to be the stud is Jarrett, of course, but he's very fast. Fleming brings something unique to the table. And I don't know what happened in the other games for Nebraska, but their offense was kind of a dumpster fire. I don't know if they knew what they were doing, but for one beautiful game, he was the leading receiver, on a Power 5 team as a true freshman. That's not something we can just completely ignore. So yeah, Marcus Fleming, number 2 transfer. He's pretty cool little player there, headed to Maryland. I think is an ascending team and an ascending offense. My buddy Felix Sharp would agree. And now we have Taj Washington, my number 1 under the radar transfer. Maybe he's not that under the radar, but he's certainly more so than some of the other guys. And he's going from Memphis to Southern Cal, all the way across the country. He will be entering his 3rd year. He needs to, really do some stuff this year, I think, to get on an NFL radar. And there's opportunity there for Southern Cal because they lost, the past 2 years, they've lost Michael Pittman. Now they're losing Tyler Vaughns. Then they're also losing Amon-Ra St. Brown. The only reliable guy left in that receiving room is Drake London. And yes, he's pretty good. But he's a unique kind of player. This basketball dude, 6'5", plays a lot in the slot. And kind of just finds his way open in the zone with some short area quickness and stuff. I don't think he's got tremendous long speed, kind of a target hog, but in that Juju Smith kind of like big slot, zone monster type guy. They don't have a true outside burner, and that's what Taj Washington can bring to the table. He is absolutely electric. I watched those Memphis games this past year, and when he came on, he was really exciting. He's a smaller dude, but, he is electric. He is very fast, and he's got moves in the open field. He's not just straight line. He can shake a guy with a couple stutter steps and get into the open field. And once he's in the open field, I mean, he really is gone. He took some rushes out of the backfield. He was an all-purpose weapon for Memphis. He did have 21% market share in his second year. He's a redshirt freshman. So he did get to that minimum breakout threshold as a second-year player. He did some kick returns. He was 43 for 743 and 6, and then 411 and a touchdown on the ground. So took some end around, some jet sweeps. But yeah, you like to see guys who are being used in multiple ways. But now he gets a chance to go up in conference from, a G5 team to a Power 5 team. And USC, I think he's got something USC does not have. Gary Bryant is interesting. A lot of people like him. He's running with the first team right now. His comp on 247 is Robert Woods, which is not an electric, speedy guy. Robert Woods is a good possession type receiver, and he's very good, but he is not, a burn you 4-4 deep type guy. And I think Taj Washington might be. They also brought in KD Nixon, I believe, from Colorado. He's older. He's going to be in his 4th or 5th year. And he's already practicing with the team and running with the ones in spring practice. I don't think Taj Washington is there yet. I think Taj Washington is better than Nixon. I read the transcript from, I think it was a scrimmage, and Nixon didn't really get a look. So he was running with the ones, but didn't get a look. So it was London and Bryant. But I mean, they're going to run 4 and 5 wide. I think there's absolutely opportunity this year for Taj Washington to make a difference. I would not be shocked at all if it was him and Drake London as their top 2 options in the passing game, just because he offers something different. But that's going to be a wide open. They run the air raid. It's going to be a lot of stats to be had. And I think there's a role for him to be the second leading receiver. Drake London probably is the favorite to be the leading receiver, of course. But Washington can line up on the outside. He's big. There's multiple instances of contested catches where he is jumping over a defender to catch the ball. He does have kind of aggressive my ball type mentality. Don't worry. He's not only contested catches. There's plenty of wide open ones or catching in a zone, making a couple guys miss, and then jetting to the end zone. I was really impressed, actually, when I watched him. We know Memphis is putting guys into the league, running backs mostly, but they have talent. They're getting athletic guys, and they're able to go recruit some of the guys that have NFL potential on the Memphis Tigers. So now he bolts from there and goes to USC. So that's my number one under the radar. I hope he was under the radar enough for you. But I do know some of these other guys are definitely under the radar. And I hope you're able to get them in your leagues, either with maybe a throw in with a trade to keep your eye on these guys, or last round startup picks, or even free agent pickups. You've got Bailey Zappi is going to be a free agent pickup because he was not even available coming from FCS. Yeah. And then same with EJ Jenkins. I mean, he's going to be available as a free agent guy in your leagues. So there you have it. That's my top 10 sleeper under the radar transfers. And we will see you next time on Why Wait Till Sunday. Also, if you've stuck around this long, you are really into this sort of thing. And you should also go check out campustocanton.com. That is our mother website. And we've got tons of stuff. I mean, this is the tip of the iceberg. Rankings of over 700 NFL and college players. We've got the data app that's incredible. Jarek Backus runs that. We've got all sorts of other articles, podcasts, every debate, the campus life, Canton Bound. So you can't, go wrong going and sniffing around that site. And then if you're kind enough to give us a subscription, we've got even more for you. So go check that out. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on Why Wait Till Sunday.